Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I am your host, Rex Bear, and we have guest Tim R. Swartz with us, an Indiana native, Emmy-Award-winning television producer, videographer, and author of dozens of popular books, including The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, America's Strange and Supernatural History, Secret Black Projects, Evil Agenda of the Secret Government, Time Travel, A How-To Guide, Richard Shaver, Reality of the Inner Earth, Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles, and is a contributing writer for the books Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, The First Ghostbuster, Brad Steiger's Real Monsters, Gruesome Critters, and Beasts from the Darkside, and Real Ghosts, Restless Spirits, and Haunted Places. As a photojournalist, Tim has traveled extensively and investigated paranormal phenomena and other unusual mysteries from such diverse locations as the Great Pyramid in Egypt to the Great Wall in China. He has worked with television networks such as PBS, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, ESPN, and more. He also appeared on the History Channel program Ancient Aliens, the History Channel Latin American series Contacto Extraterrestre. His articles have been published in magazines such as Mysteries, Fate, Strange, Atlantis Rising, UFO Universe, Flying Saucer Review, Renaissance, Undisclosed UFO Reports, and now here on the Leak Project. As well, Tim is the writer and editor of the online newsletter Conspiracy Journal, a free weekly email newsletter considered essential reading by paranormal researchers worldwide. So quite the resume, folks, and we're going to discuss not only the Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, we talk about the Nazi UFO connection, time travelers, Project Alien Mind Control. We get into some works about how some people believe the Earth is actually hollow on the interior, and there's like a whole other ecosystem inside of the Earth. Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles is discussed, and Round Trip to Hell in a Flying Saucer. So we hit on a bunch of stuff, you guys. I appreciate everybody that contributes, whether you listen to the show, you've been on as a guest. Thank you for everything, and have a wonderful day. Be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. Tim, thank you very much for joining us here at the Leak Project. How the heck are you?
Well, thank you, Rex. It's great being with you today. I'm doing fantastic as usual.
Awesome. You know, I'm looking at several of your books right now on Amazon. We've got the Nazi UFO Time Travelers. Also, one of the books that I really want to discuss, I'm a huge fan of Nikola Tesla. And you wrote Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla. Several years ago, I had the opportunity to go out to Colorado Springs. I took a motorcycle ride. It was 3,500 miles in 7 days, and it was like sitting on a phone book the entire time. It was epic. And I had a chance to go past the house that Nikola Tesla used to live in. And that house isn't there anymore. There's a house that's been rebuilt, but essentially I went past the lot, and I was going kind of slow. I was looking for the house, and a friend of mine sent me a picture to the two streets that connect there. And I'm going kind of slow on my dual sport BMW motorcycle, and there's this older couple walking to the street. They're looking at me funny, and I'm kind of looking at them like they're probably wondering what the heck I'm doing. And I stop, and I take the helmet off. I say, hey, my name's Rex. I'm just looking for the old house of Nikola Tesla. And they said, yeah, we live there now. That's it back there. I was like, well, this is a pretty cool synchronicity. And I talked to them for a few minutes. They said that there used to be a barn behind the house that several years ago some people came and took some stuff, but there was actually product there or some type of something there or another, and it's not there anymore. But it was just a neat synchronicity, I thought, to meet those folks. Really nice people. And Nikola Tesla is such an amazing person, way ahead of his time. I would love to dive into the Lost Journals.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, and I tell you something, you're really lucky to be able to track down that location, because a lot of history was made there in Colorado Springs in 1899.
Oh, man, beautiful area, nice people, and if I could pick a place to live, that would certainly be one of them.
Well, I mean, and Tesla picked that location because of the, very electrified thunderstorms that take place there. And he was attempting to see if there was a way that he could tap into that, that static electricity from those thunderstorms. And, unfortunately, he never quite got there, but while he was there, that was when he got the idea and actually perfected his whole idea of the wireless transmission of energy.
Well, that's fascinating. Now, when you bring up the thunderstorms, lightning storms, etc., is there like a connection there then? If you live in an area like that, would that give you a chance to harness more energy essentially with the type of Tesla technologies that he was working on?
Well, at Tesla's time, he never was able to, to find that. Now, conventional science or civilian science, let me put it that way. They still say that it's currently impossible to tap into that natural electricity. But I wonder because military and that black project secret science technology is probably at least 50 and some people say 75 years ahead of civilian science. And so I've often wondered whether or not, if they haven't perfected that type of technology, they've come pretty close to it, I think, because we've seen some examples of what appears to be the utilization of that kind of technology, in military aspects. There have been some whistleblowers, and of course now you always have to take that kind of testimony, with your tongue firmly implanted in your cheek, because people have been burned before by these so-called whistleblowers. But some of them have come forward and said that yeah, the whole idea that you could harness the energy from thunderstorms as conceived by Tesla is possible and has been achieved by like say DARPA and some of the research that was taking place at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in near Dayton, Ohio. So yeah, I mean, I think it's possible, and who knows where it's been taken, today. I mean, you have a science and a technology like that, and the possibilities are really endless.
Indeed, they are. And I certainly remember that there was an article, Time Magazine, 1934, July 23rd, that came out, and it talks about this death ray capable of destroying 10,000 enemy airplanes at a distance of 250 miles. And it got kind of popular for a while there, and then it just seemed to, nobody really ever talked about it after that. Did you ever get into that specific technology or research?
Oh, sure. Well, in that time, especially in the early 1930s, the concept of a death ray, I mean, that was really the hot thing for science and the military. I mean, everybody was predicting that it wouldn't be too long before somebody would perfect that kind of technology. And you look at the say like popular science fiction of the day. You had like a Flash Gordon who had their ray guns and things like that, and that all stemmed from the actual pop science that was research that was going on at the time to try to perfect a death ray. I mean, you had several scientists in Great Britain who they were being financed by the British government to try to perfect a death ray. The Japanese, before World War II, they had a very extensive secret military project going on to do the same thing. But really, it was Tesla who I think really hit that the nail on the head with his concept of a death ray. And I mean, we now know that his idea, and you'll have to forgive me, Rex. I'm not a scientist. I'm a reporter. I'm a researcher. So when I try to explain some of these like these scientific concepts, I'm not going to be like really perfect at it. So a lot of people out there who may have more knowledge along these lines may be tearing their hair out because no, it's not that. But Tesla's idea is basically a particle beam weapon. And we now know that the United States and definitely the former Soviet Union took Tesla's ideas after he passed away and ran with it. The United States with a spy satellite sometime in the late 1980s, I think it was. I couldn't tell you exactly when that was. They actually photographed an unusual array somewhere in the Soviet Union, like and they couldn't quite figure out what they were looking at. And then finally, some researchers who had been working on the same thing here in the United States said that's a particle beam weapon, And once they looked more closely at it, they realized that it was a very similar array that was being researched and probably in the process of being perfected in various U.S. Military facilities. And it definitely came from Tesla's idea that he basically just released it, to the newspapers and Time magazine in the hopes that if he put it out there, because he had been attempting to interest the United States military in this idea for several years before he released it to the newspapers, but nobody would listen to him. So once he got it out there in the newspapers, I think that they did start to listen to him, because when he passed away, well, then the United States government swooped in and grabbed everything that they possibly could get their hands on of Tesla's estate, and then it disappeared into that black hole of military research.
Absolutely. And I'd certainly like to hear about some of the material in Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla. Such a fascinating time, and that information seems to be so suppressed. There's certain places that you can get access to some information, though you just have to kind of do your homework and dig in. So this is great. Why did you start writing about Tesla also?
For me, when I went to school, nobody ever taught us about Tesla. Everything was Edison, Edison, Edison. In fact, it was to the point where, and I can't remember specifically if they actually said this, but you were always left with the impression that our whole electrical infrastructure was the result of Edison. He invented the light bulb, but you're also left with the impression that when you flick the switch, the electricity that powers that light bulb came from Edison as well. Now, to be fair, Edison actually did develop a DC system that he had operating in Manhattan before Tesla even had come to the United States. Unfortunately, DC at that time was not a very efficient way to power houses and buildings and everything like that. It had to be stepped up every couple of blocks, and that made it expensive and just not very efficient. So when Tesla came to the United States, he had this idea for the AC motor, and Edison, he could see the money flying out of his pockets from this young upstart from Europe. So the two just they just never got along. But for me, I first discovered Tesla when I was working for a television station in Dayton, Ohio. And one of the things that we had to do on, like every couple of weeks, myself and a reporter, we would go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and talk to the press liaison just to see if there was, like anything going on that we could do a story on. And Wright-Patterson, they were a hub of just all kinds of interesting experiments that weren't necessarily top secret. So we could do kind of like almost like a fluffy type of story, and that was an easy 3.5 minute fill for our newscast. And one day when we were sitting at this lieutenant's desk, and he was going through his files trying to see if there was something interesting that we could do. He made this it was just an offhanded remark. He goes, we're doing some research from based on that mad scientist Nikola Tesla's work, but I really can't talk about that right now. And then he went on to something else. And I had never heard that name before, Nikola Tesla. And that name, it sounds exotic. It sounds, like, wow, who is that? I've never heard of that name before. And then, of course, he said that mad scientist. And so that really piqued my interest. This would have been maybe 1982, 83. I can't remember exactly when it was. And so I started trying to do some research on this guy. And of course, this was pre-internet, and the local library didn't have anything on him. I mean, I found some references, to Tesla's name in electrical journals, which I mean, I couldn't make hide or hair of what I was trying to read here, but really nothing about this guy. And it wasn't till later that I ran across some biographies about him, like Margaret Cheney's books, and then some others that I started discovering more about Tesla. And from that time on, it just really became a labor of love. Every time that I would find a reference to Tesla, I'd save it and put it into my files. And as time went by, and I discovered more and more about this guy, I just got obsessed about him, because I mean, here was somebody that contributed so much to our modern technological infrastructure, and yet everybody had forgotten about him. And I wanted to know why. I mean, he invented the AC motor, the Tesla coil, our AC electrical system, not only here in the United States, but throughout the planet, came from Tesla. Yet his name, it was almost like he had been blacklisted, and and his name just thrown out. And so the more research that I did, the more I wanted to do. And it's just, and to this day, I mean, look at this. I mean, from 1982 to now, and I'm still discovering new stuff by Tesla. And especially since I put out the Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, I've had a lot of people write to me and tell me stories that that they've heard, and of course, a lot of these stories are hard to vet. So you're just going to have to take it as they are. Other stories, I was able to confirm, like people whose say their father or great grandfather were assistants in Tesla's laboratories in New York, and it's just it's just he's just a fascinating person, and I'm so happy that nowadays people have rediscovered Tesla, and that he's finally starting to get the notoriety and the fame that he just so justly deserves.
Oh, certainly. And if somebody was to pick up your book, what would they find? Could you share a couple of gems with us in that work? I don't want you to give it all away, obviously, but maybe you could share something with somebody that they might not typically find on the internet.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. Unfortunately, let's see. The original edition of the Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla came out in 2000, and it hasn't been out of print since that time. I mean, it started out with a limited run of like maybe 1,000 copies or something like that. It sold out within a matter of a month or so, and so then Tim Beckley's Global Communication that was always a priority to keep that book published. But now a lot of people have stolen, the book and have put it up on the internet verbatim. So it's going to be difficult not to find the Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla somewhere, like as a PDF file or whatever on the internet. But for somebody who hasn't read the book and is interested in it, I will tell you that Tesla, unfortunately, in the last days of his life, was basically broke and forgotten. He had attempted to build a transmitter out on Long Island in around 1911, 1912, that was going to be his wireless transmitter of electricity. He had perfected the idea in Colorado Springs when he was out there, and now he was going to do it, and he had gotten backers for it. Unfortunately, he did not tell these backers just exactly what this transmitter was going to be used for. It was actually a multi-purpose device. He was also going to use it to transmit radio signals, and possibly he was also working around the idea of like a rudimentary television, video transmission over the shortwave frequencies. But his backers were the same people who backed him in building the whole AC dynamo system there in Niagara Falls that then started the whole wired AC electrical system on the East Coast. And these people made a lot of money, and they became very rich. And when they found out what Tesla was going to do with this transmitter, they could not conceive of any way that they could make money off of this. You know, how could you put a meter on something that was just coming through the air that somebody could stick an antenna either on their house or into the ground? You know, it could have been done several different ways. And so they pulled their funding rather quickly, and Tesla had to stop work on this transmitter, the Wardenclyffe transmitter, and that was it. His name was Mud. He found it extremely difficult to find work after that time. The same people that had gotten rich off of his patents, and in fact Tesla had forgiven some debts from these people, just because they had been good to him, and they said, can you help us? We're going to go broke if we have to pay you, all the residuals that we owe you. And Tesla said, don't worry about it. Just throw me some money every now and then, and I'll be happy. Well, they reneged on that. They stopped throwing the money to him, and at the end of his life, he had to move from hotel to hotel in New York, and when he could no longer pay his debts, each hotel would throw him out. And in the process, a lot of his notes, written material, journals, things like that, ended up being kept as collateral. They'd say, well, you can get this stuff back if you can pay your bills. Well, Tesla couldn't, and so he'd have to move on to the next place. A lot of this material was kept in the basements, attics or wherever in these hotels in Manhattan, and a lot of them ended up being trashed, thrown away. Some of them being sold like as just raw paper goods and things like that. The person that I write about in the beginning chapters of the Lost Journals was a book buyer in New Jersey, and he happened to buy several boxfuls of antique books from an estate sale. And underneath some of these books was quite a few of these Tesla notes and journals. And at that time, like a lot of us, he had no idea who Tesla was. And so he started reading through this material. And of course, you have to realize that Tesla he was not a big writer. I mean, he would write magazine articles and things like that. I mean, he was a very good writer. But when it came to his own notes and research and everything like that, most of his stuff was written by his assistants. And so these journals were kind of like a combination of Tesla's scribblings, the notes taken by his assistants and things like that. So this book buyer, he started trying to compile this material because he felt that this was interesting. He'd never heard of Tesla, but the things that he was running across in these journals fascinated him. So he was taking notes from them and then saving them on, like the old floppy disk, not the great big floppy disk, but like the plastic floppy disks that were predominant, especially back in the 1990s.
Right.
And unfortunately, he had put out a notice on several Usenet groups that he was wanting more information about Nikola Tesla, and had just kind of offhanded remarked that he found some papers by him, and shortly thereafter his place was broken into and all of it was stolen. All of the hard disks were stolen from him, and in fact the hard drive on his computer was erased in just a remarkably short period of time, almost like somebody had taken a handheld degausser to the body of his computer and just zapped it in the process.
That sucks.
It really did. Well, and
Man.
the weird thing about it is that one day while he was working on this stuff, he got a knock on his door, and there was a couple of guys standing there, and they were like taking a survey or selling encyclopedias. He wasn't quite sure what they were there for, but they were almost like the traditional Men in Black situation. Not they weren't. I mean, they didn't have like the dark sunglasses and the dark hats or anything like that. I don't think. But they're wearing suits and ties, and they just seem to be just more interested in talking to him rather than conducting whatever kind of business that they said that they were there for. And it was during that time that somebody then broke in through his back door and went directly into his office, didn't take anything else, but took all of the Tesla material. And that's what when he went back, he found that all that stuff was gone, and basically his desktop computer was fried. And that's when he really got out there, and it was just like, what the heck, why did this happen? What's going on? So another researcher by the name of Jim Keith, who unfortunately has passed away, let me know about this situation, because he knew that that I was interested in Tesla. Jim wasn't too interested in Tesla, so he passes the story on to me, and so I got a hold of this guy and talked to him, and we talked for a number of weeks and passed letters back and forth and emails and things, and I got the whole story from him. But a lot of the well, I mean, not a lot of it, practically all of the early material that I have in the Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla came from this guy's memory of what he had was trying to transcribe onto his computer. Fortunately, he had a pretty good memory, but a lot of the technical details he didn't understand, so he wasn't able to properly convey them onto me. Fortunately, as years have gone by, I've had people who are a lot smarter than I am, come back to me and said, well, this guy was, this is what he was trying to explain, and this is what, Tesla was working on and referring to, in these notes. But it's just, there was just so much stuff that was in just a couple of boxfuls of paper that it's just amazing. And I just wanted to know. And I still have this request out there for anybody who, may have come across their own Tesla papers, that they've just squirreled away in a drawer somewhere, not realizing what they have. Like maybe their grandfather or somebody like that, worked with Tesla and has some material. And if so, I would love to see it.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. It sounds like what is that called? The Lost Ark or something, just get some of these papers together. It's almost that important.
Well, it's like, the Holy Grail.
Yeah, the Holy Grail, exactly. That's even better. That's even better. What I would like to know also is the technologies that he worked on. I mean, is there anything that somebody could replicate and would actually create or would have energy, like you said, just plug in something in and it's going to grab energy from the air or the atmosphere or something else?
Well, we're seeing now kind of almost like rudimentary versions of that with some of these like cell phone chargers that they don't require to be plugged in. They're basically like a flat plate, and you just put your cell phone on it or your tablet, and they'll recharge them wirelessly. And there's been some movement on devices that will do the same thing, but at just a couple of feet away from each other. But when it comes to this, where you could put up an array and transmit it or use the resonance frequencies of the planet to transmit electricity. At least in the civilian world, nobody has perfected that yet. And part of it has to do with nobody is really, or at least nobody will admit that they know exactly how Tesla was going to do it. Tesla knew how to do it. He never would have started construction on his transmitter out there on Long Island if he didn't already know that this was something that was going to work. There's been a lot of skeptics and debunkers, and naturally, I mean, it sounds like just really a far-fetched idea, but they'll say that. Tesla had it all wrong, that that his facility would never work or anything like that, and I just, Tesla was not the kind of guy that would just go and build this array if he didn't already know it was going to work. But unfortunately, only he and his handful of assistants knew exactly how they were going to do it. Unfortunately, after he had to stop construction and abandon his facility, there were a lot of his notes and journals that were kept there at that place in Long Island, and the United States government eventually had to dynamite the tower because they were afraid that it could be seen by enemy submarines out in the ocean, and they could use that to zero in on areas, like with torpedoes or things like that. And people who witnessed the tower and the building being blown up, they said that the air was filled with papers from this that just blew and scattered all over the areas, and it just, oh my gosh, it just makes me feel sick to my stomach wondering what blew away on that day, on those papers. I mean, we may have a lot. Our whole technology may be completely different today, from those papers that got away from us, but. There's also the idea that that we do know exactly what Tesla was doing, and that it is being used clandestine, on a secret scale, with the whole black budget. Secret technology type of things being used by the military. I have been told that there is a backpack that is used by soldiers under certain conditions, that under field conditions, one soldier would take this backpack and he would set up this small array from it, and then other soldiers within a several mile area could then pick up the electricity that was being transmitted from this very small, very easily set up array, and power their tents, their computers or whatever. And so I suspect that more than likely that is an excellent example of some of the technology that has that has come from Tesla research that's been developed using modern ideas and technologies, because you have to realize that Tesla could only work so far based on the technology that was available to him at the time. And as the years have gone by and we have gotten more and more advanced, then a lot of his ideas that seemed to be extremely far-fetched and just completely unworkable, we now have the technology to make it workable. But it's going to be a long time before we hear about it, because it really is. It's too valuable as a weapon. To let a lot of it leak out. Some of it leaks out, in drips and dabs as time goes by. But as for, how long that'll take, like I said, 45, 50 years maybe.
It's really interesting to think about. And what you brought up a few minutes ago about how we haven't learned how to just kind of tap into that resonance or whatever. Well, that made me think, if you can record something via sound and then find a way to transform that sound into an energy source or something, then that could be the key, I guess, in many aspects. That's just an incredible thing to think about, because there is a lot of information on that out there. You get into physics, quantum physics, the electric universe theory, and I'm more of like, I have an artist mindset where I think of the big picture and I can, see the canvas, but as far as the details, good luck with that. That's not my cup of tea, but I can certainly see the future and envision things pretty easily. But you're bringing up some really cool points, and it sure would be nice if we had access to that old school technology that could be new school technology, but we've gone down this really, I guess, consumer-driven path where these big conglomerates and people that are very well educated and have their tentacles in businesses and stuff, well, if they don't see a profit margin in it, they're going to do everything they can to suppress that information and blackball that person and make them have a bad name. We learn about the history of the victors oftentimes, so it's neat when we can get this information out there. And I would love to know about the secret of Alternative 4. I know what Alternative 3 is, but I haven't heard of Alternative 4.
Well, Alternative 4 was really just kind of my own idea based on what some of the things that Tesla was interested in, and then bringing them forward to to more modern times, and especially when it came to the whole climate change theory. And Alternative 3 was based on a mockumentary, for want of a better word, that aired in Great Britain, that talked about the scientific brain drain that was going on at that time in the 1970s, where it seemed like that scientists were disappearing. And so this television show, and I tell you something, it's
pretty good, right?
Well, it's such a bizarre story, because just imagine a show, say, like Nova. A very prestigious type of program, doing basically a hoax type of story. We've seen similar things anymore, like on the Discovery Channel with these shows like about mermaids and
right.
the mega sharks and things like that they put them out there. And, yeah. Well, we know that Sharknado, at least hopefully,
yeah, I sure hope so.
Isn't real. I live here in southern Indiana, and we have tornadoes. I'd hate to think we'd also have Sharknadoes around here.
Talk to some people on the internet; they probably think it's real.
Oh yeah,
there's
probably.
a few people out there.
But you had this, and I think the program's name was like Science Today or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But it was, it was a fairly well known, serious scientific program, and it's like the last show of the series. They put out this program called Alternative 3, where it was suggested that the various governments of the planet had come to realize that the Earth was going to burn up, basically, from climate change, that it had gotten out of control. And you have to remember, this show was put out in the 1970s. I don't think that many people had even ever considered the idea of global warming and climate change. But the writers of this show, they certainly did. And so they went and combined this with the mystery of the scientific brain drain. And they came up with the story that the Americans and the Soviet Union had gotten together and had already landed on the moon before the Apollo space program, and had gone so far as to have already landed and established colonies on Mars. And that this brain drain that was going on was the result of these scientists being taken to these secret colonies on the moon and Mars to establish colonies, to take the elites and the best and the brightest from planet Earth, and leaving the rest of us here, I guess, to fry when things got too hot and uncomfortable. And that really it at the time it panicked a lot of people. I guess when it aired, the switchboards just basically blew up, and they admitted that it was a hoax. Well, then years later, when a book was written based on this show, the writer discovered that a lot of the things that was talked about in this TV show seemed to have a basis of reality, strangely enough. And it went so far as to that this guy was was being threatened. I mean, he was getting mysterious phone calls. There's strange cars parked out in front of his house. I mean, it's just he was really starting to get paranoid, and it seemed to confirm to him that there was some kind of basis of reality to this whole alternative 3 scenario. So now I went and took it a step further and looked into the whole HARP technology, which was the radio array that had been built in Alaska that actually, strangely enough, was based on Tesla technology. And alternative 4 was the idea that possibly the mysterious chemtrails that people were seeing at the time was the result of an attempt to maybe not stop, but at least delay global warming on somewhat like a smaller scale, where you would put various kinds of chemicals and then laced with I think it was like small particles of aluminum that would then be electrified by the HARP array, causing these chemtrails or contrails to spread out a lot further than they normally would under normal high altitude condensation, and help cool the Earth down just a little bit, especially over areas that seem to be suffering the worst from the changing of the local climate, jet stream weather patterns, and things like that. And so the more that I looked into this idea, the more I found this Tesla connection. Going back to the HARP array in Alaska. The guy who did the original patent on the HARP array for a private corporation. He based it on Tesla's idea of the wireless transmission of electricity, and his idea was that you would take the HARP array up to Alaska, where the oil fields are, because at the time that he was putting this all together, there was the big controversy about the oil pipelines, because you had the environmentalists that were worried that these pipelines would break and spread oil all over the place, as to try to get them from the oil fields to some place where they could be more easily shipped out. His idea was that you would put these HARP arrays close to where the oil was being pumped out of the ground. You would burn the oil right there on the spot, producing electricity, running dynamos, and then you would transmit the electricity to whatever location was set up to receive it. So, I mean, you could get the oil, you could do with it what you wanted right there, turn it into energy, and then transmit that energy anywhere on the planet. Well, then it turned into like this big convoluted thing as corporation after corporation after corporation bought each other out, and his patent was lost to him, because of the way these corporate infrastructures, and the legalities work, and eventually it ended up in the hands of the U.S. government and military, and then they built the HARP array, and they said that they were building it to test what they call it. They call it an atmospheric heater. They said that they were going to use it to see if you could concentrate radio waves at various frequencies at places in the stratosphere to see how that would affect weather, or whether or not you could use it for like a weapons purpose, or as a communication facility for submarines deep in the ocean. There's been all kinds of interesting stories in just what exactly the HARP array has been used for. But as for what exactly it's been used for, nobody can really tell. Maybe all of the above that I just talked about, but its original purpose was to replicate Tesla's original idea that he came up with in the 19th century.
Oh, that's fascinating. And certainly if if that HARP can mess with the jet streams, and if it heats up these aluminum particles that are dropped from the skies, sure pretty much everybody's been exposed to these aluminum particles. I don't know if they get lodged into people or what, but like you said, it would be something that if they can activate it, they could heat you up pretty quick. Microwave you essentially. Oh, let's go for let's go for Mr. Number 5-6 over there. Zap him. You wouldn't even have a chance to get out of it. That's wild stuff indeed. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about also. You just came out with a book that, this is some spooky stuff right here. The Final Nail in Your Coffin. This one right here, Morgellons and Red Mercury plagues created in the NWO labs of mad scientists.
Yeah, that people have kind of forgotten about the whole Morgellons thing. That was really hot, maybe 10 years ago, when you had people saying that they had become infected with some kind of skin disease that appeared to be like a living parasite almost. Morgellons is also called the fiber disease because people who suffer from it, they will get like rashes all over their body, and from these rashes, hairs will grow out of it. That's different, from their own natural hairs. They almost seem to be, have like a plastic's not quite the right word, but more of a consistency of, say, like your fingernails. Like thin slivers of almost a chitinous type of material. And the unfortunate thing about it is that this Morgellons also replicates a very well-known psychosis or neurotic behavior by psychiatrists and dermatologists. And so when these people would go and see their doctors and say, I've got these parasites on me, the first reaction was, yeah, sure you do. Here's some Prozac. Take this and you'll feel better. Well, it didn't make them feel better. It did nothing to solve their problems. And unfortunately, the people who suffered from Morgellons, they would use like tweezers or things like that, and try to pick these fibers out of their skin, and then they would save them, like in little boxes or bottles, and take those to their doctors. Well, boy, that's just a classic textbook of what's called matchbox psychosis for these doctors. And and they've known this one for years. People will imagine that they have bugs crawling on them, and they'll pick carpet fiber, clothes fibers off their skin and take it to the doctors. And so the Morgellons sufferers, they were just being ignored, but they obviously were suffering from some kind of legitimate ailment. Naturally, there were some people who, it was something other than a physical condition, but you had other people who, I know one lady, for example, had suffered from Morgellons for a number of years, and she had to go in for knee surgery. Well, when the surgeon opened her knee up, he found that her bones and the cartilage inside her knee were covered with this fibrous material. Just growing on the inside of her, and so that can't be. I'm sorry, that can't be a mental ailment. If if a doctor actually finds this stuff growing, coming out of your cartilage and in your bones and stuff like that. People have eye doctors have found these fibers growing on the inside of their eyeballs, in that space there. So and then the fear has always been whether or not it's possible that Morgellons can jump that blood-brain barrier and actually start growing in the brain. It's still controversial when it comes to that. But as time has gone by, Rex, some brave doctors who have actually taken the time to talk to actual patients and do the research and to actually remove these fibers under clinical situations, have discovered that this does seem to be an actual ailment, and in fact, it seems to be related to Lyme's disease in some way. Probably 80 to 90% of people who report Morgellons symptoms also have Lyme's disease. So it's there could be a possibility that the same tick-borne types of diseases that are affecting people are also infecting them with Morgellons, and in fact there is a bovine disease where cows will start to develop fiber-like extrusions around their hooves that look extremely like Morgellons, and it does seems to be related to the same type of ailment associated with Lyme's disease. And so, if people are able to get high dosage of antibiotics over an extended period of time, there seems to be some progress on curing this ailment. Unfortunately, most doctors have never heard of this, and they are reluctant to give their patients, the standard treatment for Lyme's disease is to hit them with some antibiotics for a couple of weeks, and then that's it. And the doctors who are very familiar with Lyme's disease, they're like, no, this is, you have to hit them with antibiotics for a lot longer than that, maybe several months, up into a year. And that goes against what's generally known about prescribing antibiotics. So the question is whether or not Lyme's disease and Morgellons is a natural ailment that has just come out for some reason. I mean, who 2 years ago, who heard of the Zika virus? Is Lyme's disease and Morgellons kind of a similar situation where it just has basically laid somewhat dormant over the years. Maybe a couple people now and then will get it, and for some reason it jumped that barrier and became a lot more infectious. We really don't know. There's also the speculation that Lyme's and Morgellons is a military type of research disease, kind of like trying to weaponize anthrax or something like that. There's been that allegation with a number of these diseases that just kind of seem to appear out of nowhere, that possibly they had been a weaponized experiment that had gotten out of the laboratory. The truth of the matter is that we don't know. It's really just all speculation at this point on where these extremely odd diseases originate from.
Yeah, it's insane. And what about red mercury?
Well, red mercury, that's really an interesting subject. For years there was this rumor, especially like in the Soviet Union, in the Middle East, that there was this substance called red mercury that you could use to produce a nuclear weapon on an extremely small scale, almost to the point where you could carry it in a suitcase and sneak it into an area and then get a blast out of it that would be a lot more energetic than say like a normal type of an atomic blast of that size, almost like like a gamma ray weapon. Right now I just can't think of the
like a plasma type thing, or
I can't think. There was an idea for a nuclear weapon that came out where it would be very gamma extensive and it would kill people but not destroy buildings,
like an EMP type.
Yeah, but using using
Electromagnetic weapon of some sort.
yeah,
Okay.
but using like like a nuclear technology,
Okay.
powering it with an atomic blast. I'll think of it like at 3 o'clock this morning.
Like a
So
dirty bomb, kind of?
not so much neutron. That's
There
it.
we go. Okay.
Neutron bomb. Thank you.
No, 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 no.
Ah, my gosh. So I mean, and you started to see, especially coming out of some of these Baltic countries that were still at the time under the Soviet influence. People were being caught at airports trying to smuggle what supposedly was red mercury, which was like a man-made version of mercury that had been altered in some way. And the stories were never consistent on just exactly how they had been altered in the laboratory. But it was always called red mercury, and it was to be used, like for small atomic weapons. So naturally, I mean, you had a lot of Mideast countries and a lot of these smaller Soviet bloc countries, well, in Pakistan, India, places like that, who were very interested in getting a hold of this stuff just to see if it was true that that they could build their own small atomic weapons that would be a lot easier to get into an enemy's country rather than trying to build a multi-stage rocket. And attaching a warhead to this rocket and then trying to lob it, over thousands of miles. If you had a weapon like this, it would be so easy, to have it carried into, you'd have like a suicide bomber, basically, just carry it right into the capital of your enemy country. Nobody would know, would be any wiser, and just basically you'd have an atomic blast, a very highly energetic atomic blast, a lot smaller and a lot cheaper. Unfortunately, it seems like that this was some kind of you had some nuclear scientists who were saying that yes, this is possible. This stuff actually exists. But then you have others who would say that no, this is absolutely impossible. It's a hoax, and all of the samples that were found when these smugglers were arrested trying to get out or get into various countries, it was always found that it was just regular mercury that had been dyed red. But you had some, like I said before, you had several scientists who were very familiar and had worked in the whole atomic weapon field, who said that there is something to this, that we're not at liberty to discuss it, because of our various clearances, but there is something to this, and that's all that we can say. That there's a lot of disinformation on this subject. But there is a kernel of truth to it. Now, just recently, it's interesting that you would bring this up, Rex, because I just heard a very interesting story not too long ago, that the whole red mercury thing was a disinformation campaign perpetrated by the United States and a couple of other countries, maybe even the Soviet or Russia, in order to kind of weed out this whole very lucrative worldwide smuggling operation of atomic components, because you saw the whole red mercury thing come about around the time that the Soviet Union was falling apart. At that same time, you saw a lot of people who were able to sneak out of, especially some of these satellite countries of the Soviet Union, various forms of nuclear technology, and they were ending up in places like Pakistan and North Korea and other crazy countries that you wouldn't want this kind of stuff of getting to. So the story goes that somebody got the bright idea that we've got this stuff called red mercury that is very classified, very top secret, and we'll release just enough information about it to get people interested. We'll put some stuff out there and say that this is red mercury, when actually it was just regular mercury with red dye in it, and we'll be able to uncover a lot of these smuggling operations for the whole, from the nuclear technology. And apparently it worked, because I remember distinctly, for about a year's time. You read about all these arrests that were taking place of these people, and a lot of them, were scientists and workers at various nuclear facilities, especially coming from the Soviet Union and the satellite countries of the Soviet Union. They were broke, and this was a way that they could make some money to feed their family. That was their justification for it. So it's a very interesting story, Rex. Whether or not it is more than just disinformation, that there could be a thread of truth to it. I think that's fairly likely. Would it be as easy to build, say, like a suitcase nuke as the stories went? That I doubt. But you never can tell. Stories like this have a tendency to, as they start rolling downhill, you'll get a lot of junk attached to it, but you'll also pick up some legitimate information as well. And so it's next to impossible at this point to try to figure out, what's reality and what's just that extra moss that is gathered on the way down.
Oh yeah, I absolutely understand. I'm sure you saw that commercial that gal is waiting on a sidewalk. She's talking to a friend of hers. She's waiting for a blind date, and the guy's like, "Oh, you waiting for?" She's like, "Well, I'm waiting for a blind date." He goes, "Oh yeah, what's he like?" "Well, he's a French model." "Oh really? Where'd you hear about him?" "On the internet." You can't lie on the internet. And he shows up, and he looks just like a total goofball. He goes, "Bonjour."
Yeah, I remember that one.
So,
Bonjour.
Yeah.
Well, you see. Oh my gosh, like the whole, so-called UFO community. You see stories like that all the time. The Roswell incident. Boy, there's a perfect example of how a story over the years has just, oh my gosh, it's just gathered so much debris around it at this point that it's impossible to tell anymore just exactly what happened. I'm sure that something actually did happen at Roswell and probably other places, but boy, how are you going to separate all of the junk that has surrounded it? With what actually happened. You can't, and so anybody anymore that comes out and says, "Oh, well, I've got a whistleblower who, they have the definitive story of what happened at Roswell," and it's like, yeah, I've heard that before. I got swampland in Florida I want to sell you to.
You have to take everything with a grain of salt, certainly. If somebody guarantees something, well, that's when I start to really back off a little bit, because every time in the past that I thought I knew I had the answer for sure, and so often or not, I just realize I don't. So I just have to take everything in a neutral standpoint. And if it resonates with me, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. So, people have different truths and different things going on in their lives, and I don't want to judge anybody else either. But there's, certainly some incredible possibilities. Now, I've heard that it could have been actually experimental U.S. craft where they were messing with, they had like prisoners of war at the time and stuff, and they were using these prisoners of war in conjunction with these electronic experimental craft. And then I've heard the ET story. I've heard everything under the sun as well. So there's certainly a lot of speculation there. And another thing that I am just amazed by, and you've written a lot about this, is time travel.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about that incredible phenomenon?
Oh my gosh, I tell you something. I love talking about this subject, Rex. It's just it's a fascinating it's a fascinating thing. And, I mean, I'm sure that, like a lot of people, when I was a kid, I mean, you saw movies such as, The Time Machine. And, and I'm old enough that I can remember a TV show called The Time Tunnel that it only lasted, I think, a season. But, boy, I was just captivated by that. And, and who wouldn't be? I mean, just the idea that you could actually, go back into the past or go into the future and, uncover what really happened or what's going to happen. I mean, that's just so irresistible. And in my various investigations and research, in UFOs and the paranormal and conspiracies and things like that, every once in a while there would be this time travel element that would just kind of like, peek its head up again, from the surface of the water, kind of look around a bit and then disappear down into it. And so as I looked closer to some of these interesting stories, I begin to realize that that there does seem to be some kind of legitimate time travel phenomena going on out there. I mean, and I'm not just I'm not just talking about like building time machines, and things like that. There seems to be okay, there are stories that are called time slips, and that is a situation where, say, somebody would just be like walking down the street, maybe taking a run or something like that, and all of a sudden the environment around them changes. Just all of a sudden, just almost immediately, the concrete sidewalk underneath their feet suddenly turns into a brick sidewalk. The cars on the road disappear and are replaced by horse-drawn buggies. The multi-storied buildings around them suddenly turn into just one or two-story buildings, and people are dressed in period outfits. And then almost as quickly as it starts, it ends, and the person finds themselves back in their normal situations. And the people who have had these experiences, and I've since I've started researching and writing about this, I've had a lot of people approach me and tell me their own personal experiences. I mean, and these experiences to them, I mean, they say it's real. That, I mean, this is something that really happened to them. They're not crazy, that they saw what they saw. And it's more than just a visual thing. I've had a lot of people tell me that the air smells different. Sometimes cleaner, sometimes dirtier, depending on where they are. The sounds are different, and if there is an interaction, say with the people, with other people that they see, in these events, sometimes they're ignored, and then other times the people that they'll see will look at them like almost like they're seeing a ghost, and will run away from them. There's been a couple of instances in London where one of them, I mean, this guy was a retired policeman, and he was going to go into a bookstore. And as he approached it, it wasn't a bookstore any longer. It was a clothing store. And he noticed that the cars on the streets looked like that they may have been like maybe from the 30s or 40s. It's hard to say. And he went into this clothing store, and he was followed by a woman. And when they got into the store, it was a bookstore again, and this woman who went in with him, she looked surprised, and he was like, "Did you just see that?" And she was just like, "Yeah, I thought it was the clothing store. I was going to go in and see, I thought a new store, but I see it's just a bookstore now." And then she left, and his story was covered extensively by the British press, and Well, I tell you, I mean, I have come across just all kinds of interesting stories just within that vein. I mean, and very, very similar. I mean, they're all, you know, I mean, it's almost you could almost just like rubber stamp them. They're all so similar in the way that they happen. Most of the time, it happens to just one person. There have been instances where say you have like a carload of people. There was one case where people from England were on holiday in Spain, and they came across this inn, and they were looking for a place to stay, so they stayed in this inn overnight, and they were amazed at like how quaint it was. I mean, this place didn't have any windows; it just had wooden shutters. The locks on the door were it was just like a wooden latch. There was nothing modern about this place. Everything, it was lamps. The bed had like rough covers, no pillows, just like I think they said it was just like a block of wood, for them to put their heads on. And then that next morning, when they got the bill, they were amazed at how cheap it was, and so then. Few months later, I think it was, or maybe a little bit longer than that, they decided that they were going to go back again, and check the place out. They could never find it again. They went to the exact location. They couldn't find the street it was on. It was just gone. And but the unusual thing about this is that there was no record, because the British press actually, they looked into this. There was no record though of any kind of inn located in that area in the past. And another odd thing is that the innkeeper was not at all concerned when these people paid using modern currency. He just took it and didn't give him any change back. And they had taken a number of pictures, but when they got the film back, there was nothing there. It wasn't even as if the frames, and this was like regular film, not this was before digital cameras. It wasn't like the frames were fogged over or anything like that. They just weren't there. The numbered sequence, it was missing in that roll of film. So it was just almost like they had taken the pictures, but then the pictures didn't exist. It was just a bizarre case, and it just it makes me wonder whether or not some of these situations are more than just time travel, or like going back into the past, or sometimes people have reported apparently going into the future. I mean, maybe our whole concept of time and the past and the present and the future, our understanding of reality in general is just completely wrong, and that these other there could be possibly other realities that exist alongside of our own, that maybe their time is a little bit slower than ours, or a little bit faster, and that when these people have these experiences, it's not like they've actually gone back into our past or into our future, but instead they've gone like taken that step over into these like parallel realities, and had the experience and come back. Of course, this is just speculation on my part, but the more I look into these interesting cases, especially some of these ones that really involve high strangeness, I wonder whether or not trying to explain them as time travel is just too simplistic, and whether or not we even have the words or the ability to understand just exactly what is going on.
Sure. And one of the Leak Project listeners is really interested in the book you put together about Admiral Byrd and his trip beyond the poles. Mm-hmm. This is just, there's a lot of speculation, especially now, about the possibility of the inner Earth, the Earth not being round. There's a lot of stuff going on about that too. No. So yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's that's one that amazes me right now. Is the whole resurgence of the belief that the Earth is flat. And
do you believe in psyops?
Oh yeah.
You think
Oh,
it
sure.
could be like an orchestrated psyop at some of the higher levels, where maybe it started off and maybe they picked a couple dozen people to start on forums writing about the flat Earth and then comparing it to prophecies and then coming up with certain things that could make you question the possibilities and packaging it together in a real nice piece? Or do you think that it was just kind of, I don't know, just research?
Oh, kind of. I think possibly a little from column A and a little from column B. I mean, I do believe that there have been psyops experiments like that because it's very easy to manipulate certain sectors of the population using religion, politics, things along those lines. Because all you'd have to do is just put something out there that seems to confirm the belief system of certain people. And it's just amazing to see then how quickly that will spread. There was a story, a very interesting story that I saw just the other day that said that President Obama had just signed a declaration, basically making the Pledge of Allegiance in schools illegal. And the site that this story was on, I mean, it had like the ABC News banner on it and everything like that. And some of these forums and Facebook pages, oh my gosh, they were just eating this stuff up with a spoon because it was confirming every negative thing that they believe about the president, they were just horrified. And boy, what do you expect, from this president and all that? Well, this site was, it was a hoax site.
Was it like The Onion or something?
Basically, yeah. There was other, if you went and looked at some of the other news stories that were on there, I mean, it was very, they were very satirical, and tongue in cheek, but somebody saw this, they saw that ABC banner on there, and they were just like, oh, this is true. They didn't vet it. They didn't do any, research, because it fit into their belief system. And while this particular story, I mean, I don't think, it had any, kind of, at least I don't think it had any, nefarious origins. I mean, I have no doubt that there are other situations, especially on the internet now, memes that get started from experiments. Let's see how far something can go, because if the more that you know about how a crowd will react in any kind of given situation, whether it be in this country or other countries, I mean, you have an ace, you have a leg up on that country and that population, and how you can manipulate that population, in certain ways, in the event that there could be a military conflict or something like that. I mean, and I have no doubt that some of these terrorist organizations, in the Middle East, were probably some of their origins came from, not necessarily from the United States, from these kinds of psyops types of experiments, or even beyond experiments, just a deliberate attempt to manipulate a population to get them to do what you want them to do. And I mean, it's people in a crowd or a group. I mean, it's amazing how easy it is to manipulate them to go in one direction or another at your whim. So I think that the possibly like some of these whipping up a frenzy in the belief of like the flat Earth. I can see some organizations who are maybe anti-science, but anti-science because science at times is not profitable. Okay. that if you have a large percentage of the population believing that global warming is real and that we have to stop burning so much oil and not using as much gasoline or things like that, well, I mean, that's going to cut into a lot of people's wealth factor. And so maybe let's start a psyop situation there, questioning the science that was used to come up with these theories about global warming, and then it goes a little bit further and a little bit further, and then pretty soon the Earth is only 6,000 years old, and Jesus is riding on a dinosaur.
Well, totally. I mean, it's written about in the Old Testament, right?
That's right. That's right.
Sorry.
But and then so going back then to your original question about Admiral Byrd and the whole Hollow Earth thing, my book, Admiral Byrd's Secret Journeys Beyond the Poles, was an attempt to look at really it was just like a booklet almost that came out sometime in the 1960s. It's really hard to tell where it came from because it was called a samizdat, which is something that is passed basically hand to hand. You'll get it, you'll make a copy of it, say like on a Xerox machine, and then give that copy to somebody else, and then they'll do the same thing and pass it along. The original gemstone files, saying that Howard Hughes at the end of his life wasn't Howard Hughes, that he had been replaced somewhere along the lines by an impersonator. And this pamphlet or this booklet called the Secret Diaries of Admiral Byrd had came out, and it professed to be Byrd's log of when he and his radio engineer had taken a flight over the North Pole. And Admiral Byrd was very big in history as an Arctic and Antarctic explorer, and supposedly he was the first guy to actually fly a plane over the Arctic region. Same way with Antarctica. And Byrd had actually made some press releases where he had said that he had actually, flown over the lands beyond the poles and had seen areas that nobody had ever, seen before. And his secret diaries contained a story that said that while he was on this flight, that his plane was basically waylaid by flying saucers with Nazi insignia on them. Or swastikas. Let me take that back. Because the swastika originally was not associated with Nazism. It was an ancient sun symbol, and that these flying saucers had escorted Byrd and his airplane into the hollow Earth through the northern polar opening. So supposedly there are holes in the North and South Pole that will lead into the hollow Earth. And when I say the hollow Earth, just imagine, say, like a ball that is hollow on the inside. We live on the surface on the outside, and there is a world on the surface of the interior of the planet. There is a small sun right in the center. Supposedly where the excuse me, where scientists say like the nickel iron core of the planet is. Rather than that, there's actually a small sun there that provides light and heat perpetually to this inner world. And Byrd's story has it that they were taken to an underground city, almost like a Shangri-La or a Gartha type of location. A very beautiful Edenistic type of location. And that he met with these elders, elder race, and were told that they were concerned about our atomic weapons and the proliferation of them on the surface. And if we didn't cut it out, then they were going to come after us and make sure that they would cut it out. And then they let him go and took him back out, to the surface of the planet. And this story reads very much like the early UFO contactees, people like George Adamski and Howard Menger, who claimed that they were in contact with the Space Brothers. These beautiful, almost angelic beings from like Venus and Mars and other places, and that they were the flying saucers were coming here because they were worried about our atomic testing and that somehow our nuclear weapons would affect not only the planet but the solar system and maybe even the entire galaxy itself. And that's what got me interested in this story, because this is supposedly this true diary of Byrd sounded just like 100 different contactee stories from the 1950s. You had the people being kidnapped by flying saucers and meeting with these, beautiful, elder, almost angelic types of beings and being warned about our warlike ways. And so the research that I did for my book, the first section of the book, Rex, it deals with the whole Hollow Earth mythology throughout the millennia. The Hollow Earth idea it's not new. This is something that people were talking about, thousands of years ago. A lot of our creation stories from various societies throughout the planet. If people didn't originate from the stars, then we originated from underground. You'd have one society that said, the gods came down from the sky and brought us here, and then you had others that said, well, the gods came out of from underground and brought mankind with us. So, and I tell you, boy, that part was really fascinating to research and write about, because it's just so interesting how you have all these diverse civilizations. All over the planet, and they have really these almost the exact same types of stories, about the underground world and what exists there. And the whole idea in the Bible of hell, stems from these really ancient Mideastern tribal stories on the underground kingdoms and who lives there. So then the second section of the book deals with the looking into Admiral Byrd's purported northern expedition on his airplane. And what I found out in reality at that time, he wasn't at the North Pole. He was actually involved in a U.S. military operation called Operation High Jump in Antarctica, clear on the other side of the planet. And he was nowhere near the North Pole at that time. And in fact, he was involved, and this was just right after World War II, he was involved in this massive Navy flotilla that went down to Antarctica. And the reasons vary. Some of them say it was a military exercise to kind of train soldiers on what to expect, say, if the Soviet Union invaded the United States by flying over the North Pole or sending troops over the North Pole, down through Canada and things like that. Two, that they were looking for mineral reserves and what have you. But whatever the situation, whatever the reason that Operation High Jump was taking place, they went down there. They were supposed to stay there for about 6 months, when in fact they only stayed there for about 6 weeks. They turned around and came back, and Byrd was obviously disturbed by something, because he told there were a couple of embedded South American press reporters, and he told them that he was concerned after this expedition about enemy aircraft, or enemy missiles, as he called them, coming over the poles, both the North and South poles, and in invading the Western world. And in fact, he came back and told the same story to Congress. But after the initial press reports, then everything just went black. and we have no idea what exactly happened with Operation High Jump. Speculation is that they were down there looking for a secret Nazi base that had established itself, because you had several submarines at the end of World War II that had given themselves up in Argentina, and their log record showed that they had made a stop somewhere in Antarctica before giving themselves up in Argentina. So the speculation is that Operation High Jump was a mission to try to find this Nazi base, either establish contact with it, say, hey, the war is over, you're outnumbered, or destroy it. Nobody really knows, but we do know that he actually turned tail and ran after 6 weeks. So that's that in a nutshell. In a long nutshell there, Rex.
That's awesome. And I've heard a lot of the theories about there's actually oceans underneath our oceans and different thicknesses in the crusts, and you can see some of those caves. They're not even really caves, I guess, but I don't know if it's in like South Pacific somewhere where they just go down so far, people are skydiving into them literally, and you can see entire ecosystems within the Earth. So certainly there's a lot of those possibilities. Maybe some things were fabricated a little bit to set people down a certain path. Maybe they weren't, but there's certainly some incredible possibilities. And you can even go back to the Hopi prophecies to talk about people starting from the Earth and the ant people and stuff like that, helping them out of the Earth. Some fascinating stuff indeed. One other thing I was hoping maybe, or a couple other things we could talk about before we close out tonight, is I'm fascinated with the possibilities some of these ETs maybe not being from other planets, but being from other dimensions. And then you've got the book that's out there called Round Trip to Hell in a Flying Saucer. What's that about?
That's again, that is really another fascination with me, and with Tim Beckley and our other writings as well. Just looking into the whole idea that the UFO phenomena is probably a lot more complex than just little gray, big-eyed creatures coming to us from Zeta Reticuli, and this also involves the possibility of time travel, and like you said, interdimensional travel, and and even going as far as the Hollow Earth, because there was a whole aspect of the Hollow Earth mythology that came about starting in the early 1940s, even before they started seeing flying saucers over Mount Rainier in 1947. You had people writing about the underground cavern systems and the creatures that lived there, and that they had aircraft and spaceships that looked like flying saucers. And this was long before the whole flying saucer meme ever got out to the general population. So, I mean, here you had these writers talking about this with the whole Hollow Earth mythology associated with it. And I've often speculated, if people didn't start seeing flying saucers and start that whole mythology going, would we be here talking more about the idea of a hollow earth and creatures living underground rather than creatures visiting us from other planets. But these ideas of ultra-terrestrials, which was a term first coined by John Keel in his books like Operation Trojan Horse and the Mothman Prophecies, and Keel wasn't the first one, but I think he was the first guy to really popularize the idea. Him and Jacques Vallée, that the UFO phenomena may be associated with intelligences that are a lot more local than, say, coming from other planets. That it is a situation where these beings are just as just at home here on planet Earth as we are. That they have that they developed right along beside us. Maybe as like you said, like maybe interdimensional, parallel words. I mean, these are just terms that we're just throwing out there because we really don't understand what exactly is going on. But the idea is that there is other forms of intelligence that are with us on this planet that seem to latch onto our belief systems and then mimic that back to us. 500 years ago, people never heard about, life on other planets or even, other worlds outside of our own. But they certainly heard about, fairies and the wee folk and, and leprechauns and things like that. And you have all kinds of stories, about people going out in the woods and being abducted, by these little creatures who took them to strange worlds and, did weird things to them and then brought them back. I mean, you had lost time and all the same things that we hear nowadays, but associated with UFO phenomena. So I think that at least some aspects of the UFO phenomena, because I'm not going to go and say definitively that, they're not extraterrestrial beings. They could very well be. I mean, I don't have any proof either way, but I do think that there are other elements to the UFO phenomena that makes it a lot more complex than just simply little green men from other planets, and this also includes time travelers. If you have say at a future time time travel technology, from history that at this time people were seeing UFOs and flying saucers. Well, what better way than to come back into the past, disguise yourself without without influencing the past to such an extent that it has a devastating effect, on the future, that whole grandfather paradox. So, I mean, you disguise yourself as grazed from another planet, you fly around, you do your experiments, people see you, if you talk to them, you say, yeah, we're from Mars or Venus or what have you. And, people are going to believe you. If you're standing out in your front yard and a flying saucer comes down and lands next to you and somebody comes out and says, hey, we're from Mars, what are you going to do? You're going to have to take them at their word from it. Nobody else may believe you, but you know what you saw. But that doesn't necessarily mean that creature that talked to you was telling you the truth. So, these stories that we hear about UFO contacts, and the things that these creatures tell the witnesses, we really have to be careful in believing what they say, because I would say that probably the majority of the things that have been told, to these people who have had these UFO encounters, that they're not true. That Greg Bishop, he basically says that we probably do not have the brain capacity to understand what's actually going on. That words, we just don't have the words to understand. That it's so outside of our realm of understanding that all we can do is just kind of put a societal structure upon these experiences and try to explain them as best as we can. The 500 years ago, people explained them as, angels and the wee folk. Now we explain them as, as people from other planets. If this phenomena persists 500 years from now, who knows how we'll look at them. But I suspect that the phenomena will probably be pretty much the same. It'll just have taken on a different look, a different veneer to match how people are thinking, in the future. Right.
Absolutely. And I'd strongly recommend our audience go to conspiracyjournal.com if you'd like to know more about Tim. And also, you have a radio program that you do once a week, don't you?
Yes, that's correct. Myself and Tim Greenbackley, we have a webcast on the KCOR digital radio network called Exploring the Bizarre, and you can hear it Thursday nights at 10 o'clock Eastern. And I tell you something, we have a lot of fun doing this show, and we try to get guests that you won't hear on other shows, because some of these people that they're all over the place, and it's just like you've heard their stories 500 times, and we won't do that. We'll find you people that you've never heard before, and a lot of times we'll have people on who have had actual experiences. They're not just writers or researchers like me.
Right.
But a lot of these people, they've been there, they've done that.
Sure. Well, this has been great, Tim. I'm very appreciative of you coming on the show here with this Elite Project, and I really hope we have the opportunity to speak with you again sometime.
Well, thank you very much, Rex. I appreciate you having me on and allowing me to blather on tonight. I had a great time, and I hope that your audience enjoyed it, and I hope that it sparked something with them to go out and start looking into some of these things themselves and doing the actual research for themselves rather than just depending on people like myself telling them what's going on. Find out for yourself.
Absolutely. Those are some wise words. And folks, I just want to let you know about a few of these books real quick before we close out tonight. Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles, The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, Time Travel, A How-To Insider's Guide, The Secret Space Program, America's Strange and Supernatural History, Beyond the Prophecies of Mothman, to name a few. And also, folks, go to leakproject.com, become a member at Leak Project, get access to exclusive content, and check out our YouTube channels, youtube.com/Clandestine Time Lord and William Wallace. Thanks for everything, ladies and gentlemen. Have a fantastic night, and be the change you want to see. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I am your host, Rex Bear, and we have guest Tim R. Swartz with us, an Indiana native, Emmy-Award winning television producer, videographer, and author of dozens of popular books, including The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, America's Strange and Supernatural History, Secret Black Projects, Evil Agenda of the Secret Government, Time Travel, A How-To Guide, Richard Shaver, Reality of the Inner Earth, Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles, and is a contributing writer for the books Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, The First Ghostbuster, Brad Steiger's Real Monsters, Gruesome Critters, and Beasts from the Darkside, and Real Ghosts, Restless Spirits, and Haunted Places. As a photojournalist, Tim has traveled extensively and investigated paranormal phenomena and other unusual mysteries from such diverse locations as the Great Pyramid in Egypt to the Great Wall in China. He has worked with television networks such as PBS, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, ESPN, and more. He also appeared on the History Channel program Ancient Aliens, the History Channel Latin American series Contacto Extraterrestre. His articles have been published in magazines such as Mysteries, Fate, Strange, Atlantis Rising, UFO Universe, Flying Saucer Review, Renaissance, Undisclosed UFO Reports, and now here on the Leak Project. As well, Tim is the writer and editor of the online newsletter Conspiracy Journal, a free weekly email newsletter considered essential reading by paranormal researchers worldwide. So quite the resume, folks, and we're going to discuss not only the Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, we talk about the Nazi UFO connection, time travelers, Project Alien Mind Control. We get into some works about how some people believe the Earth is actually hollow on the interior, and there's like a whole other ecosystem inside of the Earth. Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles is discussed, and Round Trip to Hell in a Flying Saucer. So we hit on a bunch of stuff, you guys. I appreciate everybody that contributes, whether you listen to the show, you've been on as a guest. Thank you for everything, and have a wonderful day. Be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. Tim, thank you very much for joining us here at the Leak Project. How the heck are you?
Well, thank you, Rex. It's great being with you today. I'm doing fantastic as usual.
Awesome. You know, I'm looking at several of your books right now on Amazon. We've got the Nazi UFO Time Travelers. Also, one of the books that I really want to discuss, I'm a huge fan of Nikola Tesla. And you wrote Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla. Several years ago, I had the opportunity to go out to Colorado Springs. I took a motorcycle ride. It was 3,500 miles in 7 days, and it was like sitting on a phone book the entire time. It was epic. And I had a chance to go past the house that Nikola Tesla used to live in. And that house isn't there anymore. There's a house that's been rebuilt, but essentially I went past the lot, and I was going kind of slow. I was looking for the house, and a friend of mine sent me a picture to the two streets that connect there. And I'm going kind of slow on my dual sport BMW motorcycle, and there's this older couple walking to the street. They're looking at me funny, and I'm kind of looking at them like they're probably wondering what the heck I'm doing. And I stop, and I take the helmet off. I say, hey, my name's Rex. I'm just looking for the old house at Nikola Tesla. And they said, yeah, we live there now. That's it back there. I was like, well, this is a pretty cool synchronicity. And I talked to them for a few minutes. They said that there used to be a barn behind the house that several years ago, some people came and took some stuff, but there was actually product there or some type of something there or another. And it's not there anymore. But it was just a neat synchronicity, I thought, to meet those folks. Really nice people. And Nikola Tesla is such an amazing person, way ahead of his time. I would love to dive into the lost journals.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, and I tell you something, you're really lucky to be able to track down that location, because a lot of history was made there in Colorado Springs in 1899.
Oh, man, beautiful area, nice people, and if I could pick a place to live, that would certainly be one of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and Tesla picked that location because of the very electrified thunderstorms that take place there, and he was attempting to see if there was a way that he could tap into that that static electricity from those thunderstorms, and unfortunately he never quite got there. But while he was there, that was when he got the idea and actually perfected his whole idea of the wireless transmission of energy.
Well, that's fascinating. Now, when you bring up the thunderstorms, lightning storms, etc., is there like a connection there then? If you live in an area like that, would that give you a chance to harness more energy essentially with the type of Tesla technologies that he was working on?
Well, at Tesla's time, he never was able to find that. Now, conventional science or civilian science, let me put it that way. They still say that it's currently impossible to tap into that natural electricity. But I wonder, because military and that black project secret science technology is probably at least 50, and some people say 75 years ahead of civilian science, and so I've often wondered whether or not, if they haven't perfected that type of technology, they've come pretty close to it. I think because we've seen some examples of what appears to be the utilization of that kind of technology, in military aspects. There have been some whistleblowers, and of course now you always have to take that kind of testimony, with your tongue firmly implanted in your cheek, because people have been burned before by these so-called whistleblowers. But some of them have come forward and said that the whole idea that you could harness the energy from thunderstorms as conceived by Tesla is possible and has been achieved by like say DARPA and some of the research that was taking place at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in New Dayton, Ohio. So yeah, I mean I think it's possible, and who knows where it's been taken today. I mean you have a science and a technology like that, and the possibilities are really endless.
Indeed they are, and I certainly remember that there was an article, Time Magazine, 1934, July 23rd, that came out, and it talks about this death ray capable of destroying 10,000 enemy airplanes at a distance of 250 miles. And it got kind of popular for a while there, and then it just seemed to... Nobody really ever talked about it after that. Did you ever get into that specific technology or research?
Oh, sure. Well, in that time, especially in the early 1930s, the concept of a death ray, I mean, that was really the hot thing for science and the military. I mean, everybody was predicting that it wouldn't be too long before somebody would perfect that kind of technology. And you look at the say like popular science fiction of the day. You had like Flash Gordon, who had their ray guns and things like that, and that all stemmed from the actual pop science research that was going on at the time to try to perfect a death ray. I mean, you had several scientists in Great Britain who they were being financed by the British government to try to perfect a death ray. The Japanese, before World War II, they had a very extensive secret military project going on to do the same thing. But really, it was Tesla who I think really hit the nail on the head with his concept of a death ray. And I mean, we now know that his idea, and you'll have to forgive me, Rex. I'm not a scientist. I'm a reporter. I'm a researcher. So when I try to explain some of these like these scientific concepts, I'm not going to be like really perfect at it. So a lot of people out there who may have more knowledge along these lines may be tearing their hair out because no, it's not that. But Tesla's idea is basically a particle beam weapon. And we now know that the United States and definitely the former Soviet Union took Tesla's ideas after he passed away and ran with it. The United States with a spy satellite sometime in the late 1980s, I think it was. I couldn't tell you exactly when that was. They actually photographed an unusual array somewhere in the Soviet Union, and they couldn't quite figure out what they were looking at. And then finally some researchers who had been working on the same thing here in the United States said, that's a particle beam weapon, and once they looked more closely at it, they realized that it was a very similar array that was being researched and probably in the process of being perfected in various U.S. military facilities. And it definitely came from Tesla's idea that he basically just released it, to the newspapers and Time magazine in the hopes that if he put it out there, because he had been attempting to interest the United States military in this idea for several years before he released it to the newspapers, but nobody would listen to him. So once he got it out there in the newspapers, I think that they did start to listen to him, because when he passed away, well, then the United States government swooped in and grabbed everything that they possibly could get their hands on of Tesla's estate, and then it disappeared into that black hole of military research.
Absolutely. And I'd certainly like to hear about some of the material in Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla. Such a fascinating time, and that information seems to be so suppressed. There's certain places that you can get access to some information, though you just have to kind of do your homework and dig in. So this is great. Why did you start writing about Tesla also?
For me, when I went to school, nobody ever taught us about Tesla. Everything was Edison, Edison, Edison. In fact, it was to the point where, and I can't remember specifically if they actually said this, but you were always left with the impression that our whole electrical infrastructure was the result of Edison. he invented the light bulb, but you're also left with the impression that when you flick the switch, the electricity that powers that light bulb came from Edison as well. Now, to be fair, Edison actually did develop a DC system that he had operating in Manhattan before Tesla even had come to the United States. Unfortunately, DC at that time was not a very efficient way to power houses and buildings and everything like that. It had to be stepped up every couple of blocks, and that made it expensive and just not very efficient. So when Tesla came to the United States, he had this idea for the AC motor, and Edison, he could see the money flying out of his pockets from this young upstart from Europe. So the two just they just never got along. But for me, I first discovered Tesla when I was working for a television station in Dayton, Ohio. And one of the things that we had to do on, like every couple of weeks, myself and a reporter, we would go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and talk to the press liaison just to see if there was, like anything going on that we could do a story on. And Wright-Patterson, I mean, they were a hub of just all kinds of interesting experiments that weren't necessarily top secret. So I mean, we could do kind of like almost like a fluffy type of story. And I mean, that was an easy 3.5 minute fill for our newscast. And one day when we were sitting at this lieutenant's desk, and he was going through his files trying to see if there was something interesting that we could do. He made this it was just an offhanded remark. He goes, we're doing some research from based on that mad scientist Nikola Tesla's work, but I really can't talk about that right now. And then he went on to something else. And I had never heard that name before, Nikola Tesla. And that name, I mean, it sounds exotic. It sounds, like, wow, who is that? I've never heard of that name before. And then, of course, he said that mad scientist. And so that really piqued my interest. This would have been maybe 1982, 83. I can't remember exactly when it was. And